Mahdi, I'm just reading, by coincidence, as we talk, that you're appearing in Montreal on September the 8th to talk about 9/11.
Yeah, the post 9/11 world. You know, the security environment, the militarization of U.S. foreign policy, NATO expansion. I'm specifically going to talk about Libya and the effects of 9/11 on Libya and the war in Libya. There's going to be other keynote speakers like former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. She'll be there, as well as Professor Michelle Chizodowski. And each person will have their own niche within the discussion about the 9/11 and what it's meant for the world. You know,
That was the turning point.
10 years of perpetual war since 9/11. Afghanistan, Lebanon, Iraq, Pakistan, Libya, Somalia.
Well, 19 Muslims did it with box cutters. They took 4 planes and precisionally flew them into the buildings, and then they free fell.
Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah, that's what they say.
May I ask you, I'll change the subject because you answered, you're not talking about 9/11, you're talking about what it was designed to do in the aftermath. How is it being back in Canada? What long-term effect did the experience of Libya have on you?
Long-term effects, I think it's too soon to say anything. I don't think I've changed as a human being at all. I'm still the same person I was prior to going to Libya. I'm just disappointed. Well, I'm not shocked, but I'm disappointed by what some of the media in Canada has said, how they've tried to portray the events, the National Post, for example. Some people's job is to, it's perception management. And they've misrepresented me, and they've made a lot of mistakes in their reports. And I feel that it's been biased coverage. Not everybody, of course. And one thing I want to point out is that there are a lot of good people who work in the media, but they have limitations on what they can say, and they only work with those limitations. For example, I'm against the war in North Africa, the NATO war of aggression, the barbaric NATO war of aggression in North Africa, because I'm an eyewitness to what they've done in North Africa to Libya, and the media here won't mention that. They'll mention the fact that I was in a bad situation in the Rexus Al Nasser, actually the Swiss Inn with the other international reporters and observers. They'll mention that, but they won't touch on the politics or my views, And the ones that do try to demonize me on the views, they say I'm a blatant Gaddafi fan or supporter, when in reality, all they needed to do is read what I wrote. I was critical of the government in Libya as well, but that critique was fair. It was not one-sided, and it was critique where critique was due. It was not critique for the sake of somebody's foreign policy. It was not there to demonize anybody. It was not there to make Muammar Gaddafi look like Adolf Hitler, because by far he is being demonized specifically for foreign policy interests. Mickey Mouse could be the leader of Libya, and they'd still do the same thing. They would make him look like Adolf Hitler.
No one, I see the opposition, the people that oppose NATO's actions, but nobody really wants to call evil by the real evil that it is. That there's think tanks of people that are hell-bent on war crimes and perpetuating this war, I'm sure, for 10 years if they possibly can. And as a methodology, they're constantly working on collective punishment and killing innocents, I mean, very few people actually say this.
I don't want to use the word collective punishment. It's more like collective massacres, because it's more than just punishment. Because punishment is it's a reaction to an act. Some of this was not a reaction to any acts. They just collectively killed people to start with. So I think it would be more accurate collective punishment is accurate to a certain point, but they started collectively killing people before it became even collective punishment. For example, in Tripoli, what's been happening is collective punishment. You know, they've been punishing the people for resisting by destroying the electricity grid, by destroying electricity generators, by preventing water from going to certain areas, by destroying the hospitals, the civilian infrastructure. But that's collective punishment for sure. It's the same thing in Zawiya. These things happen. But before, at the start, it wasn't. It was more than just. It wasn't collective punishment because there was no act to punish. So it was blatant murder. It was blatant murder.
I'm glad.
These are Nuremberg war crimes. There's no question about it.
Call a spade a spade. It's good to hear you say it. Mahdi, you've gotten yourself into a bit of a situation in Libya. I'm just curious if you could do it again, if you would do anything differently.
I don't think so. I don't think so. You know, every person here too in their lives to this moment, everybody has regrets, but if you change those things you did, you won't be the person you are at that moment.
Well,
I'm not one of those people that wants to go back in time and change anything.
No, I just meant...
Of course, I have regrets. I have regrets.
But you were kind of locked up in the Rixos Hotel and then locked up in the Corinthian Hotel. Could there have been any alternative to those scenarios?
Yeah, there could have been there's a world of possibilities, you know. You're asking me about possibilities, and I could give you so many possibilities off the top of my head. But those are just possibilities, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to go too much in the realm of possibilities because
that's fair enough.
Lots of things.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I don't know. Look, you've got there's an article on these Italian GIs in NATO.
Yes.
Could you explain what it is?
Okay, I'll tell you right now. From the beginning, you know, I was with a former U.S. congressman. I was with A.K. Paul, an Indian. Actually, he's a dual national of the United States and India. An evangelist of some sort. Not to me though. It doesn't seem like. But he helped me out a lot. The ship that I was on included. It was multinationals from everywhere. Like I think I've Romanian nationals, one Hungarian national who was arrested last moment by the Transitional Council. He might have been helping train the Libyan military. There was Serbs, Ukrainians, Russians, one British national. It's the young lady who worked for Press TV. 3 French nationals. Myself as the sole Canadian. Lots of Italians. The captain was an Irishman, I believe. I don't know if he was a British national or if he was a national from the Republic of Ireland. I don't know if he was from Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland. But anyways, there was 3 Italian individuals who were presented to the Hungarian ambassador and the people responsible for the evacuation from Tripoli. And they were presented as tourists who had strayed from Tunisia, I believe, and were arrested by the Libyan officials. Now, they had no passports. They were tourists without passports. Their names at the beginning were a little questionable. They seemed like made-up Italian names to a few Italians there, or people who spoke Italian. And they had no passports, as I mentioned, and they were carrying military gear, rucksacks, and you know what somebody in the military would have. So there was major questions there, and they had big bushy beards, and they were said to have been prisoners, you know. And we had security questions too, like, you know, we asked the ambassador, like, how can there be tourists at a time of war, you know? How were there tourists here without any passports? Tourists came here into Libya and they have no passports, you know. There was no registered passports, and we gave our concerns to him, and he said the Maltese and Italian governments had assured him that these are tourists. Now, I know from people I talked to in Italy that they were not tourists, and I did not take pictures of them out of respect. You know, they went through a bad situation too, and they were prisoners. And I know people will criticize me for saying that because, they're on the other side, right? And they're on the aggressing side.
Well,
But we
no,
have,
you don't have to take photographs. You don't have to jeopardize your own life.
no, it's not about my life too. It would have been would have been good to prove that there's people on the ground, from the other side. It's not about jeopardizing my life. It's about them as human beings, as individuals too. War makes a victim out of all of us, even the aggressors, believe it or not. Those soldiers, Henry Kissinger, what did he say? Soldiers are just big dumb animals, basically, to be used for foreign policy. So these are other human beings. They might not know what they're doing, or they might not be aware, or they might just be too caught up in their lives, trying to live, that they don't think, what their actions, the consequences of their actions are. Anyways, I was told that by friends in Italy that security agencies based out of Dubai, they're basically contractors for the Blackwater network, which include mercenaries from Latin America like Colombia and Chile. They were involved there, so they could very well be contractors as well, because the Pentagon and NATO and modern military apparatus try to get by certain legalities
With contractors.
Yes, exactly. The contractors are part of the military network, the chain. Just like how the media is. It's part of an integrated machine. It's part of a big integrated machine.
I've learned there are mercenary companies operating openly throughout Britain. There's no laws, there's no regulations about it. Anybody can invest in them. It's absolute madness.
This is how they this is how they circumvent international law, through that. Like the SAS, for example, in Britain. People will temporarily retire to go do mercenary work or special forces. This is what they did in Oman, the Oman War. They let people in the army, the British army, temporarily step out, and then they come back. These mercenary companies are directly linked to the military apparatus. Blackwater,